what I remember growing up here, we were immigrants here in the 50s, it's, if you lived here, you didn't call it by that name. It was always called the Royal City. And people who didn't live here called it New Westminster. So I'm a Royal City guy, and I've always taken great pride in that. And also I think that heritage with the Staffers and with Queen Victoria, there's something to heritage. And I know the real estate pimps and the people who like to hoard the whole rest of the Lower Mainland and turn it into one big kind of bland, jello condominium project would like to get rid of that. But I'd like to keep it, and I hope a few other people do as well. I like coming from the Royal City. It's royal, isn't it? I mean, there we go. So that's that. I'm supposed to be from the Literary Storefront, but before I do, could I just cut in and read something from my, it's actually from my very first book, and I'm going to just do a quick outtake here. Because Candace James, the Poet Laureate of New Westminster, has come with us today, and she brought in a copy of Royal City Poets, the 2014 anthology, and I'm real proud to see that this poem has made it in there, so it seems to have a bit of life of it. So I'm going to read it. It's called New Westminster. It got written when I used to live just about 120 yards from here up on Carnarvon Street, which is also in the book here. There used to be two tough old buildings down here. A lot of people who worked on the waterfront, tugboats, boom men lived in there. Men who worked out of town in the bush, they would come back. And the owner of the building needed someone who could kind of pacify the place on short notice, and I got invited to become the manager because I wanted to stay home and be a writer. I quit an unhappy job out at Essendale, the big psychiatric hospital, that also gets obliquely mentioned here, and I was writing poems, and a lady in the building said, we need somebody who could be around here all the time and mow the lawn, collect the rent. You want to be home all the time and be a writer. Why don't I introduce you? So that was the secret of being a writer for me. Other people were scuffling trying to pay their rent, and I've been able to find a job here that actually paid a little money and came with a free apartment. And I had to use some street smarts to move some of the rugged element, let's call it diplomatically, out of the building. And every time a vacancy came up, I moved it in with a writer or a painter or a musician friend. And the two buildings just up here in Carnarvon Street turned into an arts hub for the Royal City here. There were a lot of writers, painters, some dancers, musicians. So it became a very cool scene. And at that very moment, this idea of the literary storefront seemed to be percolating. So we'll get into that. But just beforehand, I'd like to write this. First of all, I paid homage to the people in Paris last week, because if you're an artist and you love the arts, it's the world capital of art, and it's also the city of love, which I guess is why it's been targeted for grief. But we don't care about those people, those small-minded nobodies. We care about the little people and the arts. So let's all just remember Paris, but we'll remember New Westminster. And we used to have something around here called the annual Oolakan Run, and once a year in the springtime, the oolakan, these smelt-like fish, used to come up the river, and we all went down and bought buckets of oolakans. We had fried oolakans for breakfast and oolakans for dinner until you just didn't want to see another oolakan for a long time until next year. And the oolakan runs here was so heavy. I don't know if you remember, folks, but we could go down the old King Neptune restaurant in the bottom of what's Canada Way. This is turning into a monologue, isn't it? And we could go down there with a scoop net, and you could scoop them out of the river. And you could go over the river if you had a bicycle, or you would walk over the bridge here down to Brownsville on the other side of the river, just at the bottom of the bridge, where it's sandy there on the bar. We used to go down there after school, kick our shoes and socks off, roll up our jeans, kids, and we could go in the river, and true as God, we used to kick, we learned it from the native kids, we used to kick the fish right out of the river with our bare feet, and you could take the fish home to your mom and have them for your dinner, true as God. Those are I think we call those the good old days. And now there's scarcely an oolakan left on the coast from here up to Prince Rupert. What have we done? What have we done? So it's called New Westminster. You can imagine the oolakans are out there in the river. Night sounds drift up from the river. Exquisite screech of train rails grinding steel on cold, raw steel slowly up the line to Port Moody. Tug whistles, bald counterpoint off Brownsville beneath Patella Bridge, chugging and chugging. Burglar alarms ring and ring back of Warehouse Road, just down here. Gulls scream mad all night in feeding orgies. Oolakans arc lit by mill-yard sodium lamps. Wait, Ghosts hovering, birds veering in false flight, iridescent. Swoop the swan run, cry on starts of wind, blown up from the delta. Muscle cars rev, cobbled, hilly streets. Swarthy, glistening sea lions bark and bark for love in moonlight. Hometown boy.